Hello everybody, we are back for another installment on how to build a neck through bass. This is part 30. For this installment we're going to be dialing in the setup prior to doing our fret dress, the fretwork. Last video we got the tuners on, we got strings on, and I tuned everything up and gave it a rough setup, and the bass has since sat with string tension for a few days and it's settling in nicely. So the first thing I do is I want to sight down the neck and I want to see how straight or not straight, or whatever the situation may be, this neck is looking. When I prep my fingerboards, this is even before the frets go in, I plane in just a little bit of relief on the bass side and leave the treble side very straight. I do that intentionally. What that leaves is just a little bit of bow, a little bit of wiggle room for your bigger, fatter bass strings. They need that. Where the treble strings sit nice and flat and close to the fingerboard, it just makes for a much more pleasurable playing experience, and you can get your action a lot lower that way. Alright, so there is a little tiny bit of overall relief in the neck. I'm going to straighten that out. Just a little love right there. Okay, and I'm making note of any spots I see in the fretwork where there could be potential places that need some attention. Now I'm looking for, here it is, my string height gauge. I know this is reversed image, but if you can see that, this is the StewMac string action gauge. Very important tool to have if you're going to build or do setup work. What I do is I'm going to set this little card right on top of the 12th fret, and I'm going to measure from the top of the 12th fret to the bottom of the string. And we're looking really good. This is my parameters for a nice low setup is the G. We're just under 4/64. The D right at 4. The A is like 4.5, like 4 and some change. The E, we're almost at 5/64, and 5 and change on the low B. That's a good starting point for me. Now I'm going to sit down with the instrument. I'm going to plug it into my little QSC K12, and I'm going to play. I want to feel and listen and just see what all's going on. I want to be sure that this is behaving as it should, so that when I go to do the final fret dress, there's no surprises. Flatten everything out here. Back over that spot on the G. A little scazzy right there. We're going to check that spot out. Alright, so the area of concern is between the 10th and the 17th fret. check for any high spots or low spots in the frets. And to do that, I'm going to use my fret rocker. This is another tool from StewMac. The logo has since worn off. I'm actually going to do this holding the bass in playing position, and the reason for that is when you set the bass flat on a bench, there's actually a little bit of weight that pushes down on either end, which can encourage the slightest difference in how the neck is sitting. I want a true representation of this only determined by string tension, not by the weight of the instrument. So we're going to go to fret number 10. I'm going to see if it rocks anywhere, see if there's any high spots. And there's one. If you listen carefully, you can hear that rocking. Tick, 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 tick. So that means that on the D string, the 12th fret is sitting just a little high. Alright, so I'm going to make mental note of that. I'm also going to mark it with a Sharpie. If I can find my black Sharpie. The reason I do this, it's not that I can't remember 12th fret, but if the phone rings or my wife knocks on the door at the shop and I have to go inside and do something and come back, I might forget. I will forget that the 12th fret needed some attention, so I'm going to just mark that. Move the string out of the way and just mark the top of that fret. Alright, I'm going to move on past that one. Understanding that number 12 is high, it would be kind of silly for me to check number 12, 13, and 14. I'm going to go 13, 14, 15. And we have a little high spot there. Let me go ahead and check the rest of the way down that grouping. Yeah. What's probably going to happen is I'm going to give this general area a spot leveling. Multiple frets, just level down that area. And from here on out, I think we're good. Everything had nice clearance from there on up. And you got to keep in mind, if you have the action set high with a lot of relief in the neck, it is not going to reveal these very small fret problems. It's only when you have very low action on a very straight neck that it's going to reveal those. And that's why I take the time that I do to get this right, because I have some players that want to set their action very, very low. And the only way they can do that is if this fretwork is spot on. You can't have poorly done fretwork and expect to get low action. It's just not going to happen. You're trying to defy the laws of physics at this point. Alright, so now I have a very clear trajectory as to what to do. Turn the speaker off. Okay. So I'm going to remove the strings, and we're going to level that one spot out and put the strings back on. We're going to check it. Before I do any crowning or dressing of the ends, we're looking for level right now. We're looking for no buzz when we play the instrument. Now, I'm not going to go through the trouble of adjusting the truss rod to re-level the neck, because when I take string tension off, the neck is now backbowed a little bit. The truss rod is pulling against the string tension to make it straight. When string tension is let off, the truss rod is still doing its thing, and when that tension goes away, it's actually going to cause a backbow in the neck. And I have to understand that when I take string tension off. So I don't want to overcompensate in what I do in leveling this area. The small bites. It's kind of like EQing your bass tone. Um, a dab will do you. Montrell, I'm sorry. The reason that I use the whole tuning peg is because the back angle of my headstock is very intentional, and I want the string to follow that back angle, not go up to a higher inclined angle. Otherwise, what's the point in doing the angle, right? So yeah, I load them up about 4 to 5 windings down the post. That also just ensures more stable tuning. But mostly it creates consistency in the break angle over the nut, which is part of my design. Okay, we're going to set these over here. I'm going to tape off the instrument, even though this is a small little area I'm going to focus on. I don't want any metal flake getting anywhere on these pickups. I don't want to possibly scratch the instrument, so I'm going to shield it up. At this point in the game, my mantra is don't scratch the bass, right? Come so far, we've sanded and finished this thing. The last thing we want to do is run a file into the body and put a big gouge in it and have to work backwards. Okay, I'm going to take this file and just very gently go over this area. Then a slightly longer beam. I'm going to put some fresh sandpaper on this. This does a nice job of blending either end of an adjustment like this so I don't create a sharp dip. I'm going to put some 320 on this. I want to make a very gentle move on this. Okay, it's looking good. I learned that move from Bob Ross. All right. There is a slight amount of back bow, but I'm just going to check and see if I got those spots. And it looks like I did. All right, strings are going to go back on. Keep in mind, I haven't done anything to the truss rod, so there's a little bit of back bow, which is basically geared up for this string tension to return. So I'm going to go ahead and put these back on. There are times when I'll have to go through a set or two of strings just to achieve the setup and then take those off and put new strings on for the final here's your brand new bass set of strings. Because a lot of times this on the bass, off the bass, back on the bass, tightening, loosening, it can accelerate the fatigue of these strings, and they can go, a little bit deader sounding than they would be if they were brand new fresh. So, needless to say, I buy a lot of strings. These are the Kurt Mangan nickel round wounds, by the way. This has been my string of choice for a long time. About 16 years now. I've it's interesting. I think over the years I may have developed a slight sensitivity to nickel, but I just kind of power through it because I like the tone. But if it continues to worsen, I might have to go the route of stainless strings, and that means I'll have to branch out to a different brand, because I love the Kurt Mangan nickel strings. I'm not the biggest fan of their stainless, and that's just me being honest. That's not me throwing shade at Kurt. I love the guy; he's fantastic. But everyone that makes strings, they're basically doing the same thing, right? But they all do it slightly different. So there are other stainless strings that feel good and sound good to my ear, that don't feel incredibly rough, and they're not incredibly harsh. But enough on that. Let's focus on these frets. All right. Now, that's not perfect, right? There's some gaps, whatever. I'm not going to leave these on. They're going to come off again because we're going to have to do our final fret dress. What we're doing is putting strings on to test the leveling of the top of the fret surfaces. I consider the top of this fretted surface one surface. It's almost like approaching a fretless instrument. The frets are basically an extension of the fingerboard. If you get too individualized and compartmentalized in individual frets, you're going to have stair steps and speed bumps and you name it, all kinds of problems. You have to treat it like a smooth, continual surface. Alright, starting with the A string, bring up tension, work your way out. D, low E. Now, if you don't have pitch, have a tuner, or have an amp that plays to a tuner. Have something handy where you can be sure you're in tune. Get the G up, low B. Alright, we're going to plug this back in and we're going to test. And, hopefully I got it, but if I didn't, I'll go back and find what's next. There are times when I've had basses go back and forth 4 or 5 times on this step. That's just slowing down and getting it right. I am going to check my height. It's a little low. Okay. It's just sitting very low. That's how low the action is. I actually didn't realize my G is a little further below 4/64 than I thought. It's almost like 3.5. So the fact that it's holding up to playing with kind of a medium touch. Alright, I'm happy with that. Every note is clear. There are no buzzy spots that are jumping out at me at all. Everything feels nice and even. So, we're going to call that setup dialed in. Our next step is to do our fret dress. That's going to be the next part of the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.